Welcome back, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt inside the Beltway. This is not, however, live. That's my normal re-entry song for this time in the show. But the interview with Hugh Hewitt today is with singer-songwriter John Ondrasik of Five for Fighting. And John and I work pretty much opposite hours. John finishes his day at about 2 a.m. and I begin my day at about 4 a.m. So it's rare that we can actually talk without pre-recording. And so after a Sunday night show at Alexandria, Virginia's The Birchmere, I asked John if I couldn't catch up with him for a taped interview, and he joins me from his hotel en route to Annapolis on Tuesday night. And we're playing this on Monday night, and we're playing this on Tuesday morning. John, good to have you back. Superb show last night.
Hugh, it was so wonderful to have you and Betsy there, and it's a show I'll never forget.
Well, the Birchmere is a wonderful venue. It was packed out, and I know you're on a tour, and we're going to talk about that, but I don't want to bury the lead. The reason that this show, and Betsy and I have heard you probably 8, 9 times, is very different. It's a very different show. There's a seriousness of purpose about this show and a contemplative overcast. It's still lovely. Your hardcore fans are in love with it, but it's very different because of a song, Blood on My Hands. Now, this might be news to you. We told a bunch of people about Blood on My Hands last night and your solo at the end, your second encore on the empty stage. We'll come back to that. You know that Alessa won't play the song, John? Were you aware of that?
I'm sorry, Hugh, I missed that one.
Alessa, if you say, Alessa, play Blood on My Hands by John... Alexa, excuse me. I feel like the guy in the Saturday Night Live commercial. Alexa, play Blood on My Hand. It won't play it. Were you aware of that?
I was not aware of that. And unfortunately, it's not the first example of finding the song hard to get. But it is still on YouTube. It's still on Facebook. It's on iTunes and Spotify. But for whatever reason, Hugh, it seems like some platforms are making it a little harder than it should be to find.
Well, I want to come back to it, but before we bury the lead, if you wouldn't mind, I'd love if you would play it for the audience so they can understand 20 days after the end of a 20-year war, we're talking, and this song is about the shameful exit of America from Afghanistan. So, feel like you're playing it right now, John?
I'd love to play it for you, especially debut it, first live version on your show, because you have been here from the start. So here's Blood on My Hands. Got blood on my hands. Got blood on my hands. And I don't understand what's happening. There's blood on these hands. They're still Americans. Left her the Taliban. And he. Now how's that happening? Winking, blinking, can't you look me in the eyes? Willy-nilly, tell me, when did you decide this will defend? Your sacred motto now means never mind. Hands. Got blood on my hands. Got blood on my hands. The flag of the Taliban. Over Afghanistan. Whoa, General Austin, is there no honor in shame? Can you spell Bagram without the letters in blame? Did Uncle Joe stick a trip in your veins? Hands. I can't hear her scream. If she's not on TV. I can't hear him scream. If he's not on TV. He, to every Afghan ally that we left behind. Every child who won't know freedom, faces covered and blind. As for this American promise, now shit in the fire. Hands, got blood on my hands. Just one American. He asking what's happening.
John, after last night's or Sunday night's show, Betsy and I were in the last row, and so I could see the entire audience. And half of them stood up and applauded you. You received a standing ovation when you performed your end of set. Your quartet, your string quartet, which is brilliant, had received a standing ovation when they performed. Half of the crowd stood up, half of the crowd sat on their hands. I was kind of surprised, but then on reflection, I wasn't. Is that what you're experiencing on the tour?
Yes and no. I mean, the nice thing is everybody listens, and I'll take that. Nobody stands up and walks out. Nobody accosts me after the show, which would be fine. But the nice thing is everybody listens. And as you know, last night I always talk a little bit about the songs and put it into context. And I want people to know it's a moral message, not a political one. I want them to know if President Trump put us in this position, I would write the same song, only the names would change. And I think when they hear that, they listen to it differently and they listen to it more as a moral message. So, I've actually been really surprised. Every time we do a show, there's more cell phones out. More people are recording it. More people are sharing it. So I appreciate that. And you know what? That's fine if people don't like the song. I mean, it's America. They should be able to say that sucks. I'm going to record it and delete it and have fun doing it. So, but everyone's been listening. So that's been a blessing.
Well, I had a guess. I'm the father-in-law, and uncle of active duty service people, one of whom has served a lot of time in Afghanistan. And so I think it affects military families a little bit differently, and certainly veterans, actual combatants in the war. You spoke, by the way, very movingly about military families last night. I thank you for that. You get it. Having been in that window that you discussed once myself, it's not a pleasant window to be in, and you discussed that. And that gives me another reason for wanting to talk to you today. I want people to have context for Blood on My Hands, and a lot of podcasts and a lot of radio people and a lot of television people can't give it the time. So I'm going to set it up and have you explain it. When 9/11 happened, you were instrumental in the concert for New York. You performed Superman, which became a Grammy-nominated sort of anthem of 9/11. You didn't stop writing about 9/11. You wrote many songs that are connected to it. And you began a career in patriotic service to the troops, which along with Gary Sinise actually has no equal over 20 years. And I don't mean to embarrass you, but it's simply true. It's a matter of fact. You've organized albums for the troops. You've made USO visits. You've been to places far and wide. You'll play anywhere for a group that's doing a charity event for the vets and especially for the wounded. So you are identified not with the right or the left. You're identified as patriot. So I am curious, given that position, if this is a tough tour to do. It's 20 years and 20 days after 9/11. We're talking 20 years and 20 days. And 20 days after the exit from Afghanistan. And it's I think a PTS is on the country, that they just don't know what we've done. What do you think?
I think you're right. And I've heard from many of our troops and their families, and it is a different tour. And you're right, the tone is different. When I play What Kind of World Do You Want, it's different. When I play Tuesday, that's a plea for not forgetting the lessons of 9/11, it's different because you know what? We have. And Afghanistan is just a reflection of that. When I play Superman, it's different. It's more, frankly, sad. And I've heard from our troops, they are angry, they are ashamed. You know, for them, they tell me, hey, if I make a mistake, if I'm a trigger man and something goes bad, I am accountable, whether it's my fault or not. But Millie and Austin, you know what? They're going to get book deals and do $100,000 keynotes, and they have lacked accountability to say the least. They are ashamed that we left the people that saved their lives, that worked with them for 20 years, we left them behind to the Taliban. It's really, Hugh, a matter of honor. It's a matter of the American promise. And Millie and Austin and Blinken and the president have dishonored our nation. And we are ashamed. And I think you're right. With shame, what's the reaction to shame? We don't want to think about it. We want it to go away. We want to turn our face. We want to turn our head. And I understand why the mainstream media is not embracing the song or having me. I understand there's media bias. I understand their audience doesn't want to hear it. But I also think it's about shame. We don't want to admit what we did. And you wrote a great article in the Washington Post about complicity. And if we don't admit our complicity as a nation to what's happening right now and what's going to happen, and it's going to get worse, we'll never be able to atone and evaluate the decisions we made that were so bad, get the trust of our allies back. So this is a national, generational shame, and we are PTSD. And what we're doing is just like the song said. I can't hear her scream if she's not on TV. Most of us just want to bury our head in the sand, but we can't. We can't.
Now
that is no solution.
The lead story on the Hugh Hewitt Show Monday, the Taliban have hanged 4 individuals in Herat from construction cranes. They originally hung them from cranes in one location, and they moved the cranes around the city so everyone could get the message. They barred cutting beards in Kabul, and they threatened reprisals. They've assassinated a couple of mullahs who they do not like. You made reference last night to your friend who is actually the spark for Blood on My Hands. I'd like you to go back and tell the story of where the song came from, and also her ongoing efforts in which you are involved, in which many of my friends are involved. By the way, I want to make sure that people understand Republicans are cowering too. Republicans are ashamed too. Of the only Republicans who've stepped, Tom Cotton has retweeted and called attention to your song. A couple of congressmen have called attention to your song, Jim Banks in Indiana. They're ashamed too. It's not a liberal or a conservative deal. It's a cross-spectrum shame. But tell us about your friend who called you, because I've covered it with you on the air before, but I want people to hear it in one interview.
Yeah, I wasn't planning on writing a song. I take no joy in writing the song. I take no joy in putting the song out. And even when the initial images came out of people falling from planes and children being handed over walls, thrown over walls, I wasn't writing a song. I was just angry and upset. But I got a call, as you said, from a friend of mine who does incredible humanitarian work around the world. She's been doing it for decades. And she needed a contact number from me. And I asked her what was going on. And this was about 2 or 3 days after our last soldier left. And she said, I'm evacuating AMSITs from Afghanistan. And I'm such a kind of naive guy. I'm not in this world. I said, what is an AMSIT? And she said, an American citizen. And there was silence on the phone. And I finally said, are you telling me you're risking your life and the folks you're working with to go rescue American citizens from Afghanistan that we left behind? And again, there was silence on the phone, and she choked up a little bit and said, yes. And that night I wrote some lines, and then the song finished itself when the president gave the extraordinary success speech, which, again, I think we all were insulted by. But as you mentioned, as someone who has great respect for the military, I was hopeful that General Austin and General Milley would come out and clarify that statement, maybe give us a more realistic view of the situation and what they were doing to address it, both from a strategic perspective and a humanitarian perspective. but they echoed the same extraordinary success. What a great airlift. And I realized then this was not a military operation. This was not a humanitarian operation. It was and always has been a political operation. And then I wrote the Millie lines. I wrote the Austin lines. The Blinken line wrote itself. Wink and Blinken, that's pretty easy. And then that was done, and I put it out. And it as I said, it didn't take long. I recorded it the next day, and the song basically wrote itself.
And now the members of the media who have live in the Beltway and who have taken note of the song sort of gathered for 10 minutes, and you said something that was chilling to me. The Underground Railroad, a new one, is up and running. It is not always successful. People are dying as we talk on this interview. People are hiding, and it leads to great cognitive dissonance. I love the Browns. You love the Bruins and hockey. We like to tweet about sports. But the cognitive dissonance is I feel guilty when I do that because I'm enjoying an American pastime. I'm enjoying Twitter, which has a funny thing. It's just an amusing thing. Well, the people in Afghanistan are hiding for their freaking lives, right? They're afraid of a knock on the door. How are you dealing with that cognitive dissonance when you know and you're deeply involved with the Underground Railroad?
You know, I was thinking about this morning because I was thinking, can I tweet about the Rams game or the Dodgers? And does that just diminish the message we're trying to send? On the other hand, if we just slam Afghanistan every day, does that just become, wallpaper and people don't listen to it? I don't know. I keep going back and forth on that issue. The Underground Railroad, I just heard Elliot Ackerman, who I think would be great on your show, who really has much more detail, a former Afghan soldier and doing incredible work on the evacs, was mentioning that because the Taliban now has control of all the air access and is limiting that, now there's these overland routes that are kind of like an old style Underground Railroad that people are using. And one thing I'm going to do too, Hugh, and I know you're part of this with me, is I'm going to tell the stories of these people who are rescuing these Afghan allies. The American honor is still there. People are risking their lives. They're going down to get the people we promised to protect. So the American honor is still there. It just doesn't happen to be riding in Pennsylvania Avenue right now. So those people need to get their stories told.
Well, you said another thing last night. You are afraid that your song will be more relevant in 6 months than it is today. And that packs a lot. I'm not sure if people appreciated what that means. I did. I got it. That means every time I cover a story of an atrocity of an American LPR or, God forbid, an American citizen, actually an interpreter tortured and strung up on a crane, blood in my hands is going to play in my head. Is that what you were referring to?
Yeah, it's funny. You mentioned my song Tuesday that I wrote 17 years ago about not forgetting the lessons of 9/11. It's more relevant now than it was when I wrote it. And if we just, I talked to my friend the other day. Two of our allies were hiding in a safe house. The Taliban found them and killed them, and they're getting more aggressive. The more this story gets out of the news in the States, the more aggressive they're becoming. And I mean, you've reported heavily on this. Of course, it's going to become a terrorist haven. It's already happening. Al Qaeda is coming back. ISIS is coming back. The atrocities will happen. And then it's only a matter of time before there's another attack, either on our citizens, our military abroad. And the atrocities will just continue to grow. So I hope I'm wrong, but I wouldn't be surprised if Blood on My Hands or other songs about this become more relevant 6 months, a year from now, 5 years from now.
I could listen to Tuesday. I have listened to Tuesday 100 times. I don't think I've heard you perform it in concert before. Do you play it in concert often?
No, hardly at all. And this year, I felt I had to play it again. And thankfully some of the news organizations asked for it, but it was a plea. I saw, we Americans have a tendency to forget, right? We're kind of short term, we're compassionate, we think people will do the right thing, and we forget. And I think what's happened in Afghanistan and the response and the media's response is a clear example that we've forgotten the lessons of 9/11, of being attentive to terrorists, to making sure that around the world we have our eyes open, to taking protective measures, to not allow groups like the Taliban to have countries to provide safe haven for terrorist training camps. So
if they can provide a passport,
it is what
they
it
can
is.
send them. Yeah, if they can provide a passport, they can send a terrorist anywhere in the world. You know, John, I was live on the radio when 9/11 happened and broadcast 8 hours that day, and I was able to post the tape of that on the 20th anniversary. I listened to it for the first time in 20 years. My voice has changed. I was 45 then, I'm 65 now. I'm a different person, but I don't think I've ever forgotten what the day was like. And you are Mr. September, you know, Reggie Jackson was Mr. October. You're Mr. September singer-songwriter. And I don't know that you picked that role for yourself, but that's who you are. How did that shape your life?
You know, I think it really gave me a new perspective on music and the power of music and the significance of music. And it wasn't just Superman becoming one of the songs around 9/11 that provided solace for folks across the country and for our firefighters and their families who lost their lives. You know, when I played the concert for New York, I was sitting side stage, and I watched the Who blow the roof off Madison Square Garden, and there were 20,000 kind of emergency workers, folks who'd been down at ground zero, who'd been just suffering, doing horrible work I can't imagine, you know, digging through the rubble for a month. And when the Who sang that song, all these people were singing, they were drinking, they were crying, and that release for them was so healthy and so important. So it really kind of gave me perspective on how music can matter. And that's kind of one reason I wrote this song. I've seen it happen with songs, and certainly this song won't be like Superman, but it reminded me that it's not all about charts and fame and fortune and the shallow nature of the music business. You know, in the 60s and 70s, there were songs that mattered. There were songs that changed the culture. There are songs we hear today that we're proud of. And for me, I think we still need those songs. So it's really given me a different perspective on songwriting, not just my songs, but music in general.
Well, Betsy turned around and said to me, "What a song!" Because she had heard it, but she hadn't heard it live. And
Yeah.
it's a stark stage. You send the quartet off. You sang it probably 30 seconds longer, a little bit more of a pause than you did today when you're performing it on the podcast and on the radio. And it's a gut punch. Now, in terms of your family, I know Carla, you have two wonderful kids. They look like charming, wonderful kids. What do they think about John Ondrasik getting defined? You haven't changed. You're a patriot. But the culture has changed since 9/11. Superman could be celebrated by everyone. And blood on my hands, and I'm glad you used the term "my" because it's an American complicity, not a liberal left or a right-wing complicity. What are they? Are they fearful for you being defined as something? I mean, you're just not that thing. You're not a right-winger. You're not a left-winger. You're a patriot.
I think my wife is. She was very nervous about putting the song out, and she's worried about, you know, what the backlash may be. Though I think she's over the last couple of weeks, she's really proud to see the response and the difference it's making. My son's like, cool, man. You know, you know, my daughter, my daughter, I was frankly the most worried about. She goes to school in New York, and she's surrounded by a lot of folks that have a much different worldview. And her, I'm not going to tell you what she's studying, but in that profession, they have a very leftist worldview. And I had a conversation with her because I was not going to put the song out if she felt uncomfortable with it. And to her credit, she's like, Dad, if there's people that are going to give me a bad grade or not be my friend or not, you know, ding me on an audition because you wrote this song, I don't want to be their friends or associated with them anyways. And I was so proud. I have no idea if she even agrees with my sentiments of this song. She tends to be kind of center left, but she understood it's important for artists to be able to express themselves. And probably I haven't been more proud of my little girl, but I still worry about her because I know how Hollywood finds passive ways to blacklist folks that don't share the party line. So, but she's tough and she's a fighter, and as I said, she said, "Okay, Dad," and she's the one that gave me the final permission to put it out.
You know, I think that the party line is going to switch on this, John. I really am an optimist because before 9/11, the great Ron Howard's wife had written a novel about the oppression of women in the ungoverned territories. I had her on the air because I was so struck by how sensitive she was to the awful way in which women are treated. You can't actually be an advocate for women anywhere if you're not an advocate for women in Afghanistan. It doesn't work. And so I think events will compel us to turn to this. But now, the context of this interview, you know, I've been talking to singer-songwriters for a long time. Alan Bergman came into the studio, he's 95 now, so it was probably 15 years ago after he'd performed down in Southern California. And we talked about the joy and the difficulty of producing The Way You Were or The Windmills of Your Mind and things like that. And you get these iconic songs and you're baggage for people. And now the one song, though, that I think you would celebrate, you talked about it last night. I didn't know how it had become All for One. And again, it goes back to your being a patriot. Would you tell people about how that's become a 9/11 and a military song? I don't
Yeah,
think
it's
you
the
could
wonderful
play
thing
it, right?
about.
You can't play All for One without orchestra, right?
Well, if I had a piano, I could, and or give me a couple days, I'll come back and play it for you. But you know what? For folks listening to your show, if you really want to hear the best version of All for One, Google All for One Army Voices because the Army Voices did a version of that song a cappella that brings me to tears every time I hear it. But you know, the song was written for Hawaii Five O for their 100th episode, and it was really cool. And then I was asked a few years back to sing at the Memorial Day concert on the Capitol lawn, and expected, of course, for them to ask for Superman or 100 Years, like people usually do. And they asked for All for One. And I was so excited and pleased. And it really has become kind of a rally cry for some of our military and our troops. It's very kind of rah rah. But you know, getting back to your point about shame, I have received so many emails from our military, and I think it's important for them to know. I actually talked to Tulsi Gabbard about this because I wanted to know a feeling from someone on the left who was a soldier. And she said, here's an important thing our troops and their families need to know. This is not on you. You served with honor. You protected your fellow soldier next to you. You protected America for 20 years. You gave Afghanistan women a chance to experience freedom. This is not on you. Don't take it personally. You can't control the actions of some of our leaders, and we will hold them accountable. History will hold them accountable. They did everything right, and they're still doing it right. Some of them, even 4 stars, are down there rescuing folks that we left behind. So military families and our troops, they need to know that. It's not on them, and we will find accountability.
You know, the people who are most involved in this, John, my son works for Michael Waltz, the congressman who's the only Green Beret in Congress. He's deeply involved in the Pineapple Express. He's not saying much publicly for the same reason you're not saying much publicly, because people get killed. Selena Zito's involved in doing stuff. People who are not, but Michael fought alongside Afghan interpreters. And these are the people who are going to get a bullet between the head. These are the people who actually walked with our troops, who saved his life, who saw ambushes, who saw IEDs, and we screwed them. Now, at the Kasserine Pass, we get defeated. We abandon troops on Guadalcanal for a while. The Navy runs away. Pearl Harbor's not such a good day. Vietnam is a bug out. But this is unprecedented. We've never done anything remotely this bad. And I think we're still in a little bit of shock.
It's the great national shame. It's our greatest national shame. I saw a picture of a boy that was killed in Afghanistan because his father was an ally of ours. You know, we talk about a lot of human tragedies. Certainly the border right now, it's a human tragedy. But you know what? We didn't promise those people asylum here. I understand compassion. We want to try to help everyone in the world. But there's a difference here. We promised them we would protect them, and we left them. We didn't just leave them. We left them to the mercy of the Taliban. And you're right. It is a great national shame, and I do think we're still in shock. And I think that's why people want to turn their head away. But voices like yours, folks in Congress, hopefully songs like this, continuing to tell the story. I think again, I go back to Elliot Ackerman. They asked him, what can we do? Can we send money? He said, you know what you can do? Do the 9/11 thing. Never forget. Never forget. I think that's probably the most important thing.
Elliot's been on the show. He's co-author with Admiral Stavridis of 2034, and he'll be back. I want to wrap up by talking about the rest of the tour and its difference. Where are you going next, John? And where do people find out? Because I think this is a very unique tour. It's very different from anything I've ever heard you do for a lot of different reasons. So where are you going next?
Well, we're going to be in Hartford. We're going to be in Philly. We're going to be in Jersey. We're going to be in New York City on October 5th at Symphony Space, which should be very interesting, playing Blood on My Hands in New York City. So if you folks want to come down and have my back or throw tomatoes, I'd be happy to see you. But yeah, it is totally different. And again, I never planned on this. And I wasn't even thinking about playing the song till it kind of took off with your help. But yeah, it has a different tone. But you know what? I feel satisfied that it's being heard. And if I didn't sing the song, I think that would be kind of a cowardly act.
So my prediction is that 20 years from now, I last heard Dylan playing the Orange County Fair, so I don't know where you'll be playing. Some guys just have to perform whatever the venue is. You're gonna be out there at 80, John, still playing. I predict this will be, it'll be the must-play set. It'll be in the must-play set along with 100 Years and Superman. But I'm curious what you think the career is going to do now, because you are the September singer-songwriter. That's you. And you said last night, whenever September rolls around, you get out a different songbook. People want to hear about happy things. They want to hear about chances. They want to hear about American Slice. They want to hear all that stuff. Where do you see yourself going? Because this is a burden.
I don't know. I do think that I've found a new kind of energy in writing songs that I think impact the culture. It's fun. It's great to write songs that people like, and I'm still going to write songs that are just songs, that have no message. But I think with this particular song, I don't think it's going to be the last one. I'm looking to meet some artists, some Afghanistan artists who's escaped. I want to help tell their story. Maybe we'll write songs together. And I do think there's our friend Augie Nieto, that you know very well, who has ALS. He wrote a book called Success versus Significance. And I've been very blessed to have successful songs and be able to make a living as a songwriter. But it might be time to write songs that maybe don't make everybody happy or don't please everyone, but has a message that I think is not being said from the artistic community. And maybe they won't ever be on the radio, but maybe they'll be significant in a way that you're helping this song become. So I have nothing on my docket, but this won't be the last one.
I think the significant songs are going to show up in movies that try and help, in other streaming platforms and other different places that try and help people make sense of it. Because, John, it's not over. It's only 20 years. That's like the blink of an American eye. And what I thought was a life-changing, country-changing event did not become that. We're more tribal. So I hope you stay out of the tribal politics, but stay deeply in the consciousness of America, and that the tour continues to be a success, and that Blood on My Hands continues to get, it's going wild on YouTube. Eventually Alexa's going to play it, and eventually everyone's going to hear it. So congratulate. Great show last night. Great song. Great effort. Stay in the fight, my friend. Fight for fighting.
Couldn't do it without you, Hugh, and I mean it.
Well, thank you. Be well. Safe travel.
Take care, buddy.